Okay, so now we're really starting. Welcome, everyone. So great to see so many people here tonight, and wonderful to see the chat filling up with everyone's name and where they're zooming in from. If you have an org and your superpower. We'd love to hear that, and we need everybody's powers if we're going to get fossil fuels out of buildings in New York and beyond. So all hands on deck, all superpowers united. Great to see everybody chiming in, and we'll just get started here in a minute. I mean, it's already 6:39, so I'm down if you are to go to the next slide. Seems like we've got a pretty solid critical mass.
Oops. Sorry about that.
So yeah, so thank you all so much for being here tonight. We're really excited to share what Renewable Heat Now is up to. Many of you, I think, have joined at our past big community meetings that we've been having the last few months. But tonight we wanted to take it up a level, bring it up a notch with this Lobbypalooza. And so just in case you haven't joined us before, want to just let you know that we're here with our Renewable Heat Now campaign, which we've been working with now for, I think it's been 5 years, which is pretty amazing. And it's been a wonderful collaboration. And since the beginning, our mission has been very simple: to get fossil fuels out of buildings as quickly as possible and really promote the adoption of ground source, geothermal, and air source heat pumps. And educating the public, advocating for policies to accelerate the adoption of these technologies, and especially to make them more affordable and accessible so that everyone can live and work in a fossil fuel-free building. So that's what we've been up to. And that's a great picture from one of our many wonderful events in person. We miss so much having in-person events, but one day, hopefully soon, we'll be back together again at the Capitol on the $1 Million Staircase. But in the meantime, delighted that we can at least be together here in Zoom land. And you saw the list of organizations. Please visit the website also to learn more about our past work. I think right now we're at like 17 organizations strong, which is really fantastic. So our agenda tonight is we're in the middle of our welcome and introductions and what we're up to with Renewable Heat Now. Then we're going to go into our movement wins. We've had some really big victories recently, which is so exciting. And building electrification is getting a lot of attention, and we're making so much progress. So we're going to hear the latest on that, which will be really uplifting and exciting. And then we're going to go to do a deeper dive into how Renewable Heat Now is continuing to organize and build the movement to get fossil fuels out of buildings. It's a multifaceted strategy. Then we're going to do some lobby training, hence the name, Lobbypalooza. And then we'll do breakouts with our regional teams. And I think if you don't have a team yet, that's totally okay. It'll be clear that you'll be able to join with your region or with the region, you're interested in affiliating with. And then we'll come back and close. So that's the evening plan, and we'll be as efficient as possible here. So thanks again to everybody for joining and the great team at Renewable Heat Now who put tonight together. So next up, we're going to hear about the movement. Oh, no, wait, goals for tonight. Sorry, I forgot about goals for tonight. Can't forget about that. So as we said, we're going to celebrate. Woo! Lots of wins on the building electrification front. We're going to get organized. The 2022 legislative session is underway, and we are making moves. We're going to share the Renewable Heat Now bill package and our strategy. And we're going to get trained on meeting with our elected officials Many meetings are already, in the works, but we got to get a lot more on the books this session to get our bills passed. So we'll talk about that, and then our other goal for tonight is for people to really get to know their regional lobby teams. If you haven't met with them yet, get to know these people. These are your neighbors and friends in your region that you can work with to do these lobby meetings and really help build the movement regionally and locally. So it's a lot to get done, but we've got a tight agenda and we're going to make it happen. And I will pass it off now to Liz Moran, who is from Earth Justice and going to be talking about the extremely exciting recent win in New York City with Gas-Free NYC. So Liz, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Betta. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We have such a really good crowd, and it's because of folks like you that we got this tremendous victory and all the victories you see listed here. So recently we got the biggest city in the country, New York City, to ban gas for new construction. This ban will be starting in 2024 for smaller buildings and 2027 for larger buildings. And this is a huge success that we feel sets the stage for the rest of the state to follow. And we would not have gotten there without tremendous people power. This win is absolutely due in large part to people like you who are on these calls, making calls to city council members, making calls to the mayor to urge that this action is taken, because we know in this group that using fossil fuels in our buildings is not only harmful to the climate, but harms our health. And so if we're going to move forward to a renewable, clean future for our health and families' health, we need to stop utilizing fossil fuels in our homes. So this is a tremendous win, and we're super excited to work with you all for more.
Oops. And next we have Bill Nowak, who is going to speak about the wins at the Climate Action Council.
Thanks. Picking up from the energy that Liz just talked about, the people power, there is a climate in New York State that is hungry for making the changes that we need to make in our buildings. We have a state law right now that requires us to reduce greenhouse gases by 40% by 2030. And there was a Climate Action Council that was appointed from the highest levels of state government and appointees from various interests that came up with a plan that's going to go before the people of New York over the next year. That plan was released on December 30th. It is 330 pages long with another 500 pages of appendices, but I really urge you to take a look at it. It's an incredible document. Among the victories in there were that they're saying we will need, they lay out a vision, and the vision is $1 to $2 million electric homes by 2030. Heat pumps are the majority of purchases by the late 2020s. From 2030 on, 250,000 retrofits will be happening each year, taking our heating systems from fossil fuel heating to electric heating. They're projecting we're going to create 100,000 jobs in doing that. So the cost of this plan is in the neighborhood of $300 billion. And they also look closely at the savings, both in terms of the climate damage that we're going to avoid and the health costs that people have from the pollution from burning fossil fuels. And they estimate that around $400 billion. So costs of $300 billion, savings of $400 billion, a net of $100 billion. A key part of how we're going to get there is by sunsetting. They're talking about in 2024 that for single family and low-rise buildings, there will be no more fossil fuels allowed in new construction. And by 2027, over 4 stories, that's in the plan. And for that, the codes and standards bill that you're going to be hearing about is key. They're seeing that being adopted in early 22 to allow it to make it into the 2023 code revision and start having an impact in 2024. So when you hear about that, that's going to be an important thing to organize around. They also endorsed by 2030, no gas or oil replacements for low-rise buildings. By 2035, replacement of fossil fuel cooking and drying will happen with electric appliances by law. The last thing I want to mention is they did endorse the Geothermal Tax Credit, which is one of the items that we'll be talking about tonight. But in general, this is something that we have been organizing around and pushing for a few years now, and it's actually coming forth as endorsed by New York State. I'd like to pass it to the next speaker.
Lisa, you're up. Lisa Marshall.
Thanks, Betta. So those two wins that we just got wind of are so incredibly exciting, and Renewable Heat Now as a campaign, I would say, participated in making those wins happen, but was not necessarily the lead group. Some of our member groups were very active, but not all of us as a campaign together. However, win number 3, the most recent win, was a Renewable Heat Now led effort to influence Governor Hochul shortly after she took office to make very specific commitments around building electrification. There was a quite short but very intense campaign for the past 3 months. There was a sign-on letter, a petition, newspaper articles, and a plan to have all different kinds of stakeholder groups and interest groups meet with the governor's staff to make the same requests, which was for a commitment for 2 million all electric homes by 2030, half of which should be in serving under-resourced communities, and also funding to help pay for this transition. And so we were all waiting for what was going to happen on January 5th. I think that was only last week to find out if she was going to make those commitments that we were asking for. And we watched her address, but she didn't say so much about buildings in the address. But that same day, she issued a governor's memo laying out her commitment to building electrification, giving us nearly everything that we had asked for during the course of this campaign. We note a couple of things. She definitely said the words 2 million homes, but she didn't say all electric. She said electric or all electric ready. We still have to find out more what her administration means by that, but that was really nice to see. This gets a little geeky, but one of the issues that is a barrier to the utilities providing the service that we need for electrification has been the public service law and the obligation to serve. That she specifically mentioned that in the memo as something that needed to be fixed. Basically, it's set up now so that our money that we pay to the utilities goes to expanding the gas system. And we would like to stop that and make it go to expanding the renewable heat options that we all need. And then she didn't give an exact amount for the funding the transition, but she did make some pretty explicit commitments around funding. So all in all, we felt really excited about the power that you and I and everybody on this call helped to build to make, to reach the governor's office, to get her ear and to have her make those commitments. So, okay. Where are we in this slideshow? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Avni from Agree New York. Take it away, Avni.
Thanks, Lisa. Y'all, I'm so fired up. That was super inspirational. It's so awesome to have you all with us today. All right, so now that we're all fired up talking about our movement wins and seeing how many people here made that happen, we're going to talk a little bit about what we need to happen now, what we need for a renewable just transition. So first up, we've got $1 billion that we need per year to fund the green affordable housing fund in the budget. So one of the most important criteria for a renewable energy transition is that it's affordable and accessible to everyone. So we really need the state budget to include at least $1 billion annually for grants and financing to fund these all electric and electric ready affordable housing that Governor Hochul did talk about in her State of the State. And we need this money for disadvantaged communities so that we can ensure that housing conditions are improved for the state's most vulnerable residents. And of course, as we all saw over the weekend, the tragic Bronx fire that took place really cements that we have to get our buildings and affordable properties to be heated comfortably, but also be safe. Next, we have the All Electric Building Act, sponsored currently by Senator Kavanaugh and Assemblymember Gallagher. So this bill would require new buildings to have all electric space and water heating appliances, except where it's technologically infeasible. However, building permits for new buildings with fossil fuel systems cannot be issued after December 31st, 2023, according to this bill. So that would also, and it would also require state agencies to identify policies that ensure affordable electricity for all electric buildings, because more and more people will be using more and more electricity. We have to redesign those rates to be affordable. And this is really important because buildings are a third of New York's carbon emissions. So this is one of the biggest tasks for our state, but it really would improve our public health and drive down emissions from this sector. Next is the Advanced Building Codes Appliance and Equipment Standards Act, being sponsored by Senator Parker and Assemblymember Fahey. So this bill would actually save consumers over $1 billion by updating appliance efficiency standards that reduce energy use. And it also authorizes the New York State Codes Council to incorporate greenhouse gas emissions reduction standards into building codes. So this would make our buildings more efficient, more comfortable, more affordable for everyone. Next up, we have the fossil-free heating tax credit and sales tax exemption. So these are actually two bills. And what's exciting is several folks mentioned being interested in heat pumps when they signed up for their lobby teams. So I know we have some heat pump fans here. And the good news is that these bills would enact a tax credit for geothermal heat pump systems and exempt the sale of geothermal heat pump systems from sales tax. And we really need these provisions in order to incentivize the most efficient systems for heating. Most people cannot make a change to a more expensive system, or even if they can afford to, obviously don't want to if it won't be immediately cheaper. So we have to get more and more people interested in installing heat pumps in their homes and encourage the heat pump industry to bring manufacturing and the workforce to scale. All right, last up, we have the, oh, sorry, I skipped one. Now I'm going back to the Fossil Free Utilities Act. And this is actually in the works right now. We're drafting this in conjunction with legislators, which is really exciting, means that we'll have strong backing. And this will actually require the Public Service Commission, which is our state agency that oversees the utilities, to develop and for utilities to have to implement a plan that transitions our gas utilities to renewable heating. So right now, unfortunately, it's really incentivized for individual households and buildings to use gas because of subsidies that they receive. And so this would actually help us stop gas expansion and achieve the state's climate mandates. So we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So what is our strategy to win? How are we going to make all of this happen in 2022? So we have two main branches to our path to victory, is how we can think about it. So first, we have to empower and train people to lobby for legislation, which is why all of you folks are here, to learn about the legislation and learn about how we can talk to legislators about it. And then also we need to build organized people power. So we actually have to, tell our politicians that this is what we want and really scare them into passing and implementing it. So first of all, we have our bill package, which is a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that we need to meet our climate mandates. And this legislative action that we're building at the ground level with all of each other and with the legislators helps build a movement that pressures the governor and our state agencies, because those are also integral pieces of implementing these legislation even once they pass. So we also have regional lobby teams. A lot of you are already on regional lobby teams. Thank you so much for joining us and joining those teams. We're working on getting those up and running, and we're really excited to hit the ground running with those. And you may have noticed that we have some lobbying key targets. So we have legislators that we know that we need to reach out to. And these teams are coordinated and supported by our lobbying working groups. So hopefully you feel that you got a lot of support, you got a lot of expertise, you got a lot of people to bounce ideas off of, and that we're really here for you to, be resources. We also have a communications and movement building strategy. So as I mentioned, we have to talk to regular everyday people and get them to care about these issues. And we do that through a lot of social media building, a lot of op-eds and letters to the editors, and even press conferences that we host in conjunction with the legislators who are sponsoring these bills. And this is also something that a lot of you can participate in as well, because if you have friends with social media, or if you are interested in writing, if you have a flair for writing and you want to get involved in this, that always helps us build a united front and a really strong movement. And then lastly, for movement building, we have to bring more people and organizations into this movement in order to show our state agencies and our legislators and the governor that this is something that people want and that people need desperately right now in the climate movement. So we organize statewide rallies and also other movement building and public pressure tactics. I believe now I'm passing it over to Lisa Marshall again.
It's actually Liz, but I think we're missing. Can you go back a slide, Kim? There we go. And Liz Moran from Earth Justice is going to kick us off for a little lobbying training.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Lisa. So everyone, I'm Liz Moran. I'm the New York Policy Advocate with Earth Justice. We are very proud members of the Renewable Heat Now coalition. And like I said earlier, we're very excited to be with you all today. So we are so excited to teach you about lobbying and why that's such an important tactic. As Avni just went over, it's just one of many different tactics a successful campaign has to utilize to win, but it's a very meaningful one. I first started doing lobbying work when I was still a college student, a part of the New York Public Interest Research Group, or NYPIRG, another member organization of Renewable Heat Now, and I was utterly hooked. It is a really powerful experience, and legislators absolutely love to hear from their constituents. Constituents talking to elected officials is a very powerful thing and is tremendous in moving the needle on an issue. So we're going to walk you through today every step of the process on how to lobby, how to get a meeting together, what's going to make for an effective lobby meeting, and so much more. So Kim, if we can go to the next slide. So here's what we're going to tell you about today. Why lobbying matters. Like I just outlined, lobbying is a very important tool in speaking directly to your elected officials about why an issue matters to you as their constituent. We're going to teach you how to determine your targets. Who do you need to talk to, maybe beyond your own elected official? Getting that meeting. A lot of people don't know how to reach out to their elected officials' offices. Assembling your team. We've been doing this as teams. So what makes for a good team? What's going to make for an effective story? What's going to convince that elected official to side with you on your issue? We're going to talk about the roles that people should have in those meetings. Who should be talking about what key things you need to cover? That we'll be going over in the meeting structure. We'll also go over some etiquette, some do's and don'ts of lobbying, some basic 101 there. And then lastly, what you need to do to follow up. So next slide, please. So why are we working so much and getting all of you to help us in our lobbying efforts? I think folks are aware we're up against some well-endowed interests, and that's the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry does not want to die. They have spent billions of dollars over the course of decades deceiving elected officials, deceiving the public about their role in causing the climate crisis that we now face. And this same industry spends tremendous amounts of money lobbying and putting out misinformation campaigns to this day. So what do we have to fight that back? We're not all as wealthy as the fossil fuel industry. What we have is our voices. So while it may seem like we don't have that much power, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that actually all of us together have more power than the fossil fuel industry. We can beat the fossil fuel industry. In fact, here in New York, we have on a number of momentous occasions. I think a lot of folks are well aware we banned fracking in New York State. We got the New York City gas ban. You know, we've gotten so many wins, and it's because of people like you speaking out, talking to your elected officials, going to rallies, coming to events like this to show that you're willing to fight for the things that matter and to protect public health. So that's ultimately why lobbying matters. Like, getting all of us together is to out-influence these special interests that make profit off of polluting our environment. So next slide, please. So who are our targets? Why are we talking to people we're talking to? What's this all about? So New York State, we have a bilateral legislature. We have the state Senate and the state assembly and the leadership of those bodies. So the leader of the assembly is Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie. He is a Democrat from the Bronx. And the Senate Majority Leader, so the leader of the Senate, is Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who is from Yonkers. So they obviously have a tremendous amount of power. They ultimately control what legislation comes to the floor of their bodies for a vote. So we need to influence them and make sure we're talking to enough elected officials that can influence them. So they'll bring up our legislative package to the floor for a vote. So how do we influence them? Members of key committees. There are a number of different committees within the state legislature that meet and talk about bills related to specific areas of law. So in our case, we're going to be very interested in members of the Energy Committee, members of the Environmental Conservation Committee, and members of the Housing Committee. We also want to be talking to powerful Democrats. So our legislature is democratically controlled. The Democrats have been in power for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years now. As a result, they actually have a pretty solid majority. So we don't need to focus as much on Republicans, but there are Democrats that do have more power than others. So we're going to need to take that into consideration too. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we are talking to elected officials from every area of the state. We have to make sure that we have as many legislators buying into our issue and understand that this has statewide significance right away. So that's a big reason why we have our lobbying teams set up the way that we do, to make sure that everybody can have, will be hearing from their constituents. So next slide, please. So what do you do? How do you set up a lobby meeting? Well, firstly, you're going to have a constituent, ideally, call their district office. So if you go to the state assembly or the state Senate website, you can find who your elected official is if you don't already know them. And then when you go to the website, there will be a contact form, and they'll have options to contact their district office or their legislative office. So in this case, it makes sense to contact their district office. You can attend any open hours they might have and ask for a meeting directly, although in the age of COVID, maybe you might not be doing that. Remember to be persistent. They get a lot of requests for meetings. If you don't hear back in about a week, it's worth following up. So don't be afraid if you have to do a little bit of follow-up. When you're requesting this meeting, so you're not always going to get a meeting with the elected official themselves. But you should make clear, if you can't meet with the lawmaker, that you would want to meet with their chief of staff or their legislative director. These are positions within their offices that are going to influence the type of policies their lawmaker takes up. And then lastly, you want to send them some of our materials and the names and affiliations of anyone who's going to be attending that meeting. So those are some of the very basic logistics of getting a lobby meeting together. So next slide, and then I believe I will be passing over to Lisa.
That's right. Thanks, Liz. I'm Lisa Marshall with Mothers Out Front, and it's been really fun working with Liz, and she has so much experience doing this work. My work has been mostly preparing volunteers to talk to their local elected officials, more on the town or county level, but it's really all the same principles. So when you're putting your team together, in this case, we have teams of people who have signed up, but that might not be everybody you want to have to come to your meeting. In particular, we want to have an emphasis on constituents of that lawmaker, because it's obvious to everybody probably, but if they're the ones who voted for them and are, the lawmaker relies on them to stay in office. So it's best, other people who aren't constituents are good to have to come to the meeting, but you want your constituents to be primary. You want to show off your power. 3 to 6 people at a meeting is a good size. More than that, it gets obnoxious, and you can't, if it's an in-person meeting, sometimes you can't even find a conference room that's the right size. But fewer than that, you're not representing your the breadth and depth of your organizing as well as maybe you could. You want to have some diversity. So if you're looking around the room in your lobby groups and you're seeing mostly people from your age and race and socioeconomic sector, you might want to think about who do you know who might care about these issues, who would be willing to come to a meeting with you and represent more broadly the constituency in your area. We just had a meeting where in Tompkins County where people are very active. We had a meeting with a lawmaker with quite a few new people that had never met with this lawmaker before. That adds a lot of credibility because they, the people who are habitual activists, the lawmaker can kind of get tired of hearing from the same people. When you start to hear new voices, I won a campaign a few years ago where the legislators commented, wow, it was all these new people coming talking about this that really made a difference to me. So think about who has a powerful story to share. Somebody impacted by climate change, somebody maybe who has a small business doing weatherization or heat pumps, somebody who had a really terrible situation with high energy bills, and then they were able to get weatherization and heat pumps, and now they have a more comfortable house. Maybe their health improved, maybe they have lower energy bills. Somebody with a powerful story is a good person to bring to your meeting. And then think about what interest groups this lawmaker might care about. So they might be really, really care about small businesses. So the heat pump contractors and weatherization contractors in your area. They might really care about unions. See if you can get a good conversation with some of the unions in your area who are interested in this kind of, in this sector. Public health, we know from all the data that heat pumps improve public health, improve your household health and your air quality. So people who are interested in public health might want to be able to speak to that. And housing advocates, of course, one of the best things about this campaign is not only are our buildings the greatest source of greenhouse gases, but also our housing has so many issues that can be resolved through investing in housing. So this is a really, really intersectional place in the climate space. So if you have housing advocates in your area who would be willing to speak to this, you could bring them along. And then of course, who's connected to that elected official, whether they're their friend, their neighbor, a major donor. If they have some good connection, that's always helpful. So, assemble your team. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but try to keep these things in mind as you go. Okay, so before you go, it's really important to prepare. and think about who is going to do what in the meeting. And a person could take on more than one of these roles, but it's good for everyone coming to the meeting to have at least one role. So I mentioned storytelling before. It's really helpful to have somebody who's prepared to tell a personal story. It really changes the tone of the meeting. It gets everybody listening. It gets everyone engaged. It moves people. Someone who's really good at explaining the purpose of the meeting, why we're here, and can introduce the Renewable Heat Now bill package. If you don't feel confident introducing these bills, reach out to one of us, because we are available to either help prep you or to come to your meeting with you if needed. So don't feel like you have to know everything or you have to be confident to request a meeting. That's not the case at all. Okay, here's a really important rule. Make the ask. Somebody actually has to ask the lawmaker in the meeting to co-sponsor all of our bills. And it's very important that you ask and make space to get an answer. So that's a really important role. It's good to have a note taker. It's good to have someone to who's going to reflect back what was covered at the meeting and talk about the next steps. Someone to remember to take a picture. Maybe we'll post that on social media. Someone to send a thank you note, super important. And someone to record the results of the meeting into the campaign spreadsheet. So the results are basically, these people met with this lawmaker on this day. The lawmaker is a yes to this bill, a yes to this bill, a maybe to this one, and on the fence about that one, or whatever the results are, so that we know where we are. So now I'd love to ask you guys if somebody would like to raise their hand and tell about if you told your story at a meeting with a lawmaker or a elected official, and how that went. Just one volunteer maybe from the audience here. Anybody raising their hand? I can't see. Should have had a plant. Or if you went to a meeting with a elected official and somebody told their story. I know that
Like
everybody.
Shayak has raised his hand.
Oh, who's that?
Shayak.
Oh, great. Hi, Shayak, please
Hi.
tell a little bit about your meeting.
Yeah, I think I've told this story multiple times, but probably most recently to Amy Paulin. This is like why I fight for various climate causes. So this is my go-to story. I fight for it because I'm concerned about the my daughter's future, like what kind of world she will grow up in, and also I also do it because I come from a part of India which is very much under climate risk, and so because I worry about, my parents live there, I worry about how things are going to turn out for them, how things are going to turn out for my cousins who live there, and it's very much on the coast and threatened by rising sea levels. So
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that so much. I also see Mary with her hand up.
Hi, this wasn't energy related. Sorry, I'm a little sleepy. Wasn't energy related, but I went to a couple of town halls that Tom Reed held in Ithaca, because I disagreed with a lot of his policies, but in particular his support of medical savings accounts, particularly because he owns a business that collects for overdue medical bills. So I approached him personally, and I was super polite, and I just went up and shook his hand. I said, "Sir," and I said, I wish you would reconsider your support of this, because I have had cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, and that's expensive. And I had health insurance, and I said, nobody can save up enough to really cover that kind of thing. So I was just rational and polite, and I made it short, and it was civil. So that's my experience.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing. That's so powerful. And when you share your stories, it's nobody can contradict you. Your story is your story. It's your truth, right? It's really powerful to share your truth. Okay, so the next slide is going to look a lot like this slide, because once you have your roles, that helps you with the structure of your meeting. I recommend that you and your team write out a little agenda for yourselves before you go to the meeting. You don't have to share that necessarily with the legislator, but it's just for you to keep track of making sure you get through everything that you have planned. And most often you're only going to get a half an hour. So you want to be really organized to make sure you get through everything. But that said, don't skip the introductions, because the introductions are powerful. It helps everybody acknowledge who else is in the room. It helps the lawmaker see who their constituents are and where they live. It just makes each person a real human and an individual. So take time for some introductions. This second point is so important. Everyone goes into their meeting thinking laser focused on their ask and what they're there for. If you can make the time to do research on your legislator and find out some things they've worked on, find out what they're proud of, and come into the meeting thanking them with some gratitude for stuff that they've worked on, it really establishes goodwill with them, and it makes them feel good that you have looked into what they have already accomplished or have been working on. And it just makes them want to help you more. That's just human nature. So then if you have somebody prepared to share their personal story, I definitely recommend taking time for that. A well-honed personal story or public narrative can take 3 minutes or less. And it just can be super, super powerful. And I wouldn't skip that part unless you absolutely don't have anybody to do it. Then you're going to go over the Renewable Heat Now legislative package. You will have sent the bill package materials in advance. They may or may not have read them, and that's okay. So you'll take time to go over it. If it's an in-person meeting, try to have a printout to hand over. If not, you will have emailed it and they can hopefully look at it in their email. The next point, this is very important. This is why you came to the meeting, right? Make the ask. The ask is, will you co-sponsor the All Electric Building Act? Will you co-sponsor the Codes and Standards Bill? Will you co-sponsor the bill that doesn't have a name yet that's about the utilities? Will you co-sponsor the geothermal sales tax and credits? So, and get them to, answer. It's a yes, no, or maybe. So try to make sure you know what their stance is on each one before you leave that room. And this next part is when a meeting can get a little hairy because it's the discussion. This is the most open-ended part. Please make space for your legislator to talk now. A lot of legislators just love to talk. They might want to just tell you their pet peeve. They might want to talk about something else. And they might want to ask you questions. So just use that time as effectively as possible. Be as polite as you possibly can. Do a lot of nodding and smiling. And then try to direct back to the reason you came there eventually. So that's when the person whose role it is to wrap up, recap, and identify the next steps is super important, because that discussion can get a little wild sometimes. And as you're getting close to the end, you want to make sure you have time to say thank you. And it's really nice to take a group photo and post it on social media, tag the legislator. Thank you, legislator so-and-so, for meeting with our team today. We can't wait to work with you to pass these bills. Hip, hip, hooray. So that's helping keep the pressure on them, not just the private in the room meeting, but the public discussion of the meeting. And they do love to be tagged in constituent photographs. Okay, next slide. These are some basic do's and don'ts. Take them or leave them, take them with a grain of salt, add your own. I think the most important thing on the do list is to be prepared to do that research in advance so that you know who the legislator is and you know what their sort of special issues are, what they care about. And when I worked on preparing a training with somebody who was an elected official for a long time, she was adamant that we had to put this be on time part. So, because they go from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting to another meeting to another meeting all day when they're doing constituent meetings. So get your team there at least 10 minutes early, so you're ready to go as soon as the legislator is ready to meet with you. Don't, this first one can be very tempting. When they ask a question, you always feel like you might always feel like you need to answer it. It's perfectly okay to say, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure of the answer. We're going to find out and get back to you. Much better than trying to answer a question you're unprepared to ask and get yourself into a sticky situation. Also, they sometimes may try to goad you. I was in a meeting about a climate thing, and the mayor said, well, the one thing I don't want to see is windmills all around this city. And so we weren't there to talk about windmills, so I just nodded and said, okay, move on. I was like, of course I wanted to dive in and tell them everything I knew about wind turbines, wind power, but I didn't. And then try to make sure you get back on topic, if things get too far afield. Okay, next slide. Okay, follow-up is really important. As soon as you're able to, it's really a good idea to debrief with your team, because we're always learning from each other how to do this work better. So every meeting you have, you'll think about how to do it better next time, how to make sure everybody's included, get everybody's input and feedback. A thank you note to the legislator is very important. A, that just makes them feel appreciated, and B, it reminds them of what you talked about and that they need to move that work forward. For example, if they said, yes, I'm going to co-sponsor this bill, in your thank you note, you can say, yes, we're looking forward to seeing your name added to the list of co-sponsors. Make sure somebody has that role to follow up on the next steps, and, share back with the rest of the team how it went. The team could mean your little regional legislative team. It could mean your organization. It could mean this larger group at Renewable Heat Now. All this sharing that we're going to be doing over the next few months is going to be building up our knowledge and our confidence and our power to do this work and get these bills passed. Next slide. Okay, so now we want to hear from you a little bit again. And for anybody out there who's already had a lobby meeting on the Renewable Heat Now bill package, I'd love a volunteer to just raise your hand and say, how did your meeting go? And we could hear from a couple people. Maybe we're going to unshare the slides for a second. What messaging was effective? What pushback did you get? And what questions do you guys have for us about this training? So let's do the first part first. For people who've had a meeting, if anybody be willing to share, don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing to share and talk a little bit about that meeting and how it went, it'll be very encouraging for other people to hear about it. Is that your hand up, Tara?
It is. I can't turn my camera on right this second, but basically I had a meeting with my assemblywoman, Sandy Galiff, actually attended the Renewable Heat Now launch event, which I was super excited to see. And we happened to have a meeting scheduled with her for the following week that was on some other things that were related. So we threw in the Renewable Heat Now bills, and she signed on to, I believe it was the one of the ones about tax credits that she wasn't aware of.
Great.
She's, we got pushback from her on the 2023 fossil-free buildings, but I feel really hopeful, like we're a step ahead as far as when we actually do get another lobby meeting with her, because now I know what her objections are to that bill, and the other ones she's all signed on. So I'm really excited and hopeful about getting her all the way on board.
Awesome. Great report back. Way to go, Tara. Were there any messages, anything you guys said in your communications with her that you felt resonated, that she sort of got that little legislator sparkle in her eye?
I think mostly she was just she likes to talk about how she's already on board with an idea or how she was pushing it forward before. So she did some of that. So that's good. If she likes to claim being a champion, I'm happy with that, as long as she follows it up with championing more.
Definitely. Well, once you guys get her totally on board, you should see if she'll invite you onto her little her TV show that she does. She does that local TV show, and she brings people on. And I got to be on it once with her. So definitely ask, because she might do that and get you to talking about it.
That's a great idea.
To a wider audience. Okay, any other volunteers? Oh, Carol, go ahead.
So we had
since it's your superpower to not be shy.
Yeah, well, if there's somebody else here from the Tompkins County group who'd rather share.
No, I saw your hand. There you go.
Okay. We have a super fantastic group in Tompkins County, including 2 or 3 people who are really new. I mean, they describe themselves as fully new, although one of them has already been in Tompkins County for 8 months and another one for a year and a half. So that's not so new, but they were people who were new to our legislator, who knows a lot of us. I served on Tompkins County legislature with her when I was the old hat and she was the rookie. But we already knew going in that she, is a progressive and has good politics and would be with us on most of these bills. And in fact, she was. People did a great job just telling their stories. We had the newer people, or the people who just weren't known to her, do most of the talking, and we had one person who really knew a whole lot more than I did about the all-electric building bill, who was able to talk to her at a level. I mean, it frankly went a little over my head, but Anna was willing to co-sponsor most of these bills. She had some questions that, again, for Bill, for this gentleman in our group, whose name I don't have right here, that were very technical. She was really informed about it and had some concerns from the progressive end of things. She also had concerns, so she'll be a co-sponsor, and hopefully she already is, I don't know, on some of these bills. She's willing to reach out to some of her colleagues on some of them. And then she wanted us to take it a step further. I thought this was very interesting. And I realized that the Renewable Heat Now group has defined a legislative package. This is what we think, I assume those who formed the package think we can achieve. This Assembly member Kellis was disappointed to see that it didn't go further. She wants to see a bill in the future, or even added to this package, although I think we made it clear that we had a set package that we are advocating for now. She'd like to see something that would prohibit utility companies or change the rule for utility companies so that they cannot continue to charge poor people higher rates for their utilities. In particular, they will be the people who will be left holding the bag with, as those of us who can afford to convert our homes to electric and away from gas. She's worried that it will be poor people who will be left holding the bag with higher utility rates, Carol, because the assets are almost stranded.
I'm going to jump in, and
Oh.
actually some of that is addressed in this bill package. So I'm glad that that came up in our meeting, but thank you so
Anyway,
much. for
so I'm
sharing,
hoping,
Carol.
at some point, anyway,
Yeah.
it was a
We have
fantastic
to
meeting.
move on because we need to make sure there's time for the rest of the agenda, but thank you guys so much for sharing. And we are going to be meeting now, monthly to share back and keep talking. So as you have your meetings coming up, think about what you would want to share back with the group and what questions you want to ask the group next month. Okay, so we've talked a lot about these regional lobbying teams, and I think most people here are already signed up for a regional lobbying team, but if you are not, now is the time to sign up. We broke out roughly by region, and if you're not sure which team to join, that's quite all right. You can just bop around till you find the right one. So there's the link in the chat, and you just fill out the simple little Google form, and that way we'll have your information, and your team leader and co-leaders will reach out to you. And now, next slide, please. We are going to break out with our regional teams, and we don't have very specific instructions because every team is maybe in a different place. Some have already met, some haven't met yet, some have already had a lobby meeting, some haven't, some just joined the team today. So the main point of the breakout is for you, for your team to go around and get to know each other a little better. And then if you have an opportunity to start to talk about when you're going to meet and who your prime targets are in your area, that would be great. So this is where it gets a little scary on Zoom. You're going to, again, scroll down with your cursor. Remember when we did reactions, now you're going to click on breakout rooms, and you're going to get a list of breakout rooms, and you're going to be able to choose by region which breakout room you're going to go to. And there you will have one of your leaders or co-leaders there to help facilitate the room discussion. And we'll bring you back in a little bit.
Welcome back, everyone. Sorry to pull you out of those productive conversations.
Well, you had to. There's only 1 minute left, Jessica.
I bet you Western New York wins for the soonest meeting. We're meeting at 1:15 tomorrow.
Oh, wow. I think you did win.
We're meeting
That's
at
fantastic.
1:10.
Oh, you're meeting at 1:10, Matt?
No.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Kim, I think you're taking us home.
I think Kim is not with us, so I'm going to take us home.
right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Aguilé with Alliance for a Green Economy, just pitch hitting real quick at the end. We're so excited to be working with you to pass this package of really important policies. So these are just some very quick next steps before we let you go for the evening. Please make sure you filled out the registration to join one of the regional lobby teams if you haven't. This is how we will communicate with you and how your team co-coordinators will stay in touch with you about next steps and next meetings. And a big next step is to start meeting with your elected officials to get them co-sponsoring the bills in the package. We will be having monthly meetings of this big group. So we're going to be in touch with all of you about the next one so that we can continue to keep you up to date on everything that's happening and continue to share with each other how it's going with the visits with electeds and share talking points and frequently asked questions and everything like that. So stay tuned with that, and please join us for upcoming media events and movement actions, which we'll be pushing out. And our best way to reach you is if you've joined one of those lobby teams. We'll have your contact information. We also have weekly statewide lobby calls where we're just kind of keeping everything organized and coordinated and moving forward. And if you want to join one of those if you want to join those calls, you can just email Lisa Marshall, and her email address is right there on the slide, and we can add you to that invitation. So those are weekly. And then finally, there is a big Call Hochul week happening right now to ban fossil fuels in the state budget. And so we would love for you to this week call Governor Hochul and ask her to make sure to ban fossil fuels as soon as possible in the state budget, and her number is there as well. And we will be following up with everyone who registered for this event with the slides and the recording of the event and the Hochul number and everything like that. And we would just really appreciate all of you for coming tonight and spending an hour and a half with us on this awesome Lobbypalooza. So I'm going to just stop sharing now so everybody can see each other's faces again one last time. Maybe we could share the love one more time with the love emoji. And we'll see you all soon. Have a good night.